Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Pastor Mo of Liberating Truth Church, and you are listening to a walk through the Bible. We are endeavoring to teach through the Bible, the entire Bible, from Genesis 1 and 1 to Revelation 22 and 21. Tonight we are covering Genesis chapters 29 through 31. So share this out and let people know Liberating Truth Church is online with a walk through the Bible, Genesis chapters 29 through 31. So, Jacob is on the run from Esau. He bought Esau's birthright and stole the blessing of the firstborn from Esau. Their mother helped Jacob steal the blessing because Jacob was her favorite and Esau was Isaac's favorite. So Rebekah sends Jacob to her brother Laban's house. And here in chapter 29, Jacob arrives in the land of their people and meets his beautiful cousin Rachel at a well. Genesis 29, verse 1, I'm in the Amplified Version, reads, Jacob went on his way and came to the land of the people of the east near Haran. Remember, Haran was named after Abraham's brother who died and left Lot behind. And we know that Abraham took Lot, his nephew, with him as he traveled. Verse 2 says, as he looked, he saw a well in the field, and there flocks of sheep lying there resting beside it because the flocks were watered from that well. And it goes on to talk about how Jacob met the men of Haran, and he asked them, do they know Laban? And they say, sure, we know Laban. And they said that his daughter Rachel would be there soon to water her flock. And it says in verse 9, while he was yet speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Okay? And verse 10 says, when Jacob saw his cousin Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and Laban's sheep, he came up and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered the flock, or allowed them to drink and wash. And then Jacob kissed Rachel in greeting. Okay, he just didn't, grab her and, throw her back, how they do in Hollywood movies. But he kissed her as a respectful greeting, and he wept with a loud voice. This woman, his cousin, was so fine, the brother cried. She brought tears to his eyes. All right. And Jacob told Rachel he was her father's relative, Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. All right. And so it says, when Laban heard, this is verse 13, when Laban heard of the arrival of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced and kissed him and brought him into his house. Then he told Laban all these things, that had happened from him, leaving his father's house and coming there and meeting Rachel, so on and so forth. Then Laban said to him, you are my bone and my flesh. You're my people. And Jacob stayed with him a month. All right? And so he's been with him a month, and now Laban says to Jacob, just because you are my relative, should you work for me for nothing? So I guess he had been working for Laban to earn his keep. He in Laban's house. He got to eat. He got to sleep. So he says, because you're my relative, tell me what should your wages be? So his uncle assumes Jacob came, stay. He assumes he came to stay for a while and work for him. And so verse 16 says, now Laban had two daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Now some may pronounce it Leah or Leah. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Now many scholars have tried to answer the question of what was wrong with Leah's eyes. But we don't have enough information to know exactly what was wrong with them. But we do know whatever the issue was, it made her less attractive compared to Rachel. So Jacob loved or was attracted to Rachel more than he was Leah. Okay? And so verse 18 says, Jacob loved Rachel. So he said, I will serve you as a hired workman for 7 years in return for the privilege of marrying Rachel, your younger daughter. Laban said, it is better that I give her in marriage to you than give her to another man. Stay and work with me. So Jacob served Laban for 7 years for the right to marry Rachel, but they seemed like a few days because of his love for her. So 7 years was nothing to serve for this fine woman, all right? It seemed like just a few days to him. So a man couldn't just fall through and take the woman of his choice without paying the father what was due to him to have his virgin daughter. It didn't make a difference if you were family or not. And we'll get deeper into the process of engagement and marriage in ancient times later in our studies. I can tell you this, it wasn't as easy as it is today. You had to go through the father, and there was a cost to have his young virgin daughter. A father didn't allow his daughter to live in his house with children out of wedlock. A young girl couldn't have sex before marriage and date any kind of way she wanted to in her father's house as a young woman. Men didn't seek older women or women who had been sexually active and women who had already had kids. They looked for young, virgin women. Now, I'm not condemning anyone in this culture, so don't even go there. You know how people out there say, oh, so what is he saying? Our culture today is obviously different than the ancient culture. The opportunity for me to honor my wife's father wasn't there. And we both were older. We both already had grown kids, and we were divorcees. So I don't have the right to condemn anybody. So we just thank God for his grace, and we understand that, our culture today is different. People get married without acknowledging the parents at all. Is that a good idea? Is that respectful? I would say no, but the law doesn't state that we have to. I'm not even sure that the Bible even demands that we do that today. I don't see in Scripture where it does. None of us got married according to the ancient way of being married, not even the ancient way of the Israelites. Many of us are not Israelites. So I'll just leave that right there. So verse 21 says, Finally Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my time of service is completed, so that I may take her to me as my wife. In the King James Version, it says that I may go into her, have sexual intercourse, to officially consummate or complete my marriage. I've served my time, give me my wife. So Laban gathered together all the men of the place and prepared a wedding feast with wine. But in the evening he took Leah. He didn't take Rachel. He took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Jacob. And Jacob went into her, or consummated the marriage, completed the marriage with her. Laban also gave Zilpah, his maid, to his daughter Leah as a maid. But in the morning, And when they woke up from celebrating, when Jacob woke up, it was Leah who was with him, and not Rachel. And he said to Laban, "What is this that you have done to me? Did I not work for you 7 years for Rachel?" Not Leah. "Rachel, why have you deceived and betrayed me like this, man? What are you doing? You trying to give me your wife, your daughter, you know." I ain't going to go there. But Laban only said, "It is not the tradition here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older." Why didn't Laban tell Jacob this up front? Because obviously, not only was he trying to honor their tradition, but he probably was trying to pass Leah off because he knew that she wasn't attractive. But then again, he could have been sticking to the tradition. We don't know. But we do know that Laban wasn't crazy. He knew who Jacob loved. He knew who Jacob wanted. He told him who he was going to labor for. But Laban like, "Nah, you getting Leah. She's the oldest, and we probably going to have a problem giving her away." Okay? Secondly, this raises the question how Jacob didn't know he was laying with Leah and not Rachel. Number one, her face could have been covered. That was their tradition, right? It could have been dark in the room, and they hadn't had close relations. You know, he didn't test drive her. He didn't get a feel for her. He couldn't be all up on her, hugged up on her, kissing all on her, feeling all on her, like we do today before we get married. So he wouldn't have known the difference if her face was covered. Like, well, I know how Rachel feel. I know how she smell. I know her kiss. No, he didn't know that. So verse 27 says that Laban says, "Finish the week of the wedding feast for Leah, then we will give you Rachel also." You got to take the older one first. "And in return, you shall work for me 7 more years." So he had to work 7 more years to get Rachel. Men, are you willing to work for your woman? Okay? Are you willing to work for your woman? Would you have done this for the woman that you love? Okay? Verse 28. So Jacob complied and fulfilled Leah's week of celebration. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his second wife. Okay, so now that's 14 years he's labored to get Rachel. Okay, he got Leah after 7, but he had to do a whole nother 7 years worth of labor to get the woman he actually wanted. Verse 29 says, Laban also gave Bilhah, his maid, to his daughter Rachel as a maid. So Jacob consummated his marriage and lived with Rachel as his wife, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, which means this term hated didn't mean he just literally hated Leah, but he loved Rachel more than he loved Leah. And he served with Laban for another 7 years. Okay? So this means he stayed another 7 years after that. So we can say 21 years. All right? Now when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, okay, he didn't literally hate her. And we'll see the difference when God said he loved Jacob and hated Esau. It means he preferred one over the other. All right? He made her to, let's back up, verse 31. Now when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he made her to bear children, but Rachel was barren. So the one that Jacob really loved couldn't have children. Wow, what a dilemma. You know, worked all this time for her, now she can't have children. When God saw Jacob favored Rachel, he favored Leah. Okay? So Jacob favored Rachel, but God favored Leah. Now, whose favor would you rather have? God's or man's? Come on. Verse 32 says that Leah conceived and gave birth to Reuben. Reuben becomes Jacob's eldest son. Remember this son, Reuben, okay? Now what Leah says is, now that she's had Reuben, the Lord has seen my humiliation and suffering. Now my husband will love me. Okay? Let's move right along. Verse 33. Then she conceived again and gave birth to a son, and said, because the Lord hath heard that I'm unloved. And his name was Simeon. All right. Verse 34, she conceived yet again, the third child. And she says, now this time my husband will become attached to me as a companion. And she named this son Levi. Then she conceived again the fourth son, and says, now I will praise the Lord. And she named him Judah, which we will later find out his name means praise. Now, can I help some women real quick? You can have as many children as you want by a man. That ain't going to make him love you. Hello? It's not going to make him love you, women. All right, moving right along. Now, let's go to chapter 30. We're in chapter 30. I'm in the Amplified version. I hope you've shared this. When Rachel saw that she conceived no children for Jacob, she envied her sister. It was an embarrassment, a reproach to not be able to have children in that time. It brought them grief when they were physically unable to have children. So she told Jacob, give me children or else I will die. And Jacob got upset now, and he became furious with Rachel and said, am I in the place of God who has denied you children? Jacob is saying, I have no control over that. Why are you mad at me? It's God who has made you unable to have children, not me. Now, the brother could have been a little more compassionate, y'all. Come on now. And so, verse 3 says, she said, here, take my maid Bilhah and go into her. And when the baby comes, she shall deliver it while sitting on my knees, so that by her I may also have children. So she pulls a Sarah and goes and gets her a surrogate mother, okay? And so it says that Bilhah conceived and gave birth to a son for Jacob. Then Jacob said, this is verse 6, God has judged and vindicated me, and has heard my plea, and has given me a son through my maid. So she named him Dan, which means he judged. Then she conceives again and gives birth to a second son. And in verse 8 it says, with mighty wrestlings and prayer to God, I have struggled with my sister and have prevailed. So she named the second son Naphtali, which means my wrestlings. Verse 9 says, when Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob as a secondary wife, or what's also called a concubine. Zilpah, Leah's maid, gave birth to a son for Jacob. Then Leah said, how fortunate. So she named him Gad, which means good fortune. Then she has another son and says, I am happy, for women will call me happy. So she named him Asher. So these women are putting Jacob to work, man, and he's probably not complaining at all. What man would? Women Back then, wanted children so bad they would share their men with another woman. Okay, again, remember, Sarah started this surrogate mother stuff. Okay, she wasn't patient enough to wait uh, for Isaac. And so she gave Hagar to Abraham. Okay? And so verse 14 says, now at the time of wheat harvest, Reuben, the eldest son, went and found some mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. Now, why does she want some of these mandrakes? But Leah answered, it is a small thing that you have taken my husband already, right? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? So Rachel said, Jacob shall sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes. When Jacob came in from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must sleep with me tonight, for I have in fact hired you with my son's mandrakes. Now, mandrakes are said to be a plant that was used to strengthen fertility in men and women. So that's why, she's going after these mandrakes. She wants to be fertile again. She wants Jacob to be fertile too. She wants more children. So he slept with her that night, God listening and answered the prayer of Leah. Remember, Leah has God's favor on her life. And she conceived and gave birth to a fifth son for Jacob. And so she says that this is a reward because I have given my maid to my husband. So she named him Issachar. And so Leah conceived again and gave a sixth son for Jacob. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good marriage gift for my husband. Now he will live with me, regarding me with honor as his wife. Remember, I told you, all these kids ain't going to make Jacob love her, because I have given birth to six sons. So she named him Zebulun. Afterwards, she gave birth to a daughter. So she is the only one that birthed a daughter to Jacob. And her name was Dinah. Many people don't know Jacob had a daughter named Dinah. Most people only remember Jacob for his 12 sons, which we'll find out later were called the children of Israel, because his name is going to be changed, and they are the 12 tribes, the 12 men that started tribes in the nation of Israel. Verse 22, then God remembered the prayers of Rachel now, and God thought of her and opened her womb so that she would conceive. So she conceived and gave birth to a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace and humiliation. She named him Joseph. Remember, later on in this chapter, Joseph is going to be a key person in this lineage. May he add, and said, may the Lord add to me another son. And we'll find later again, Joseph became a very important key person in the story of Israel. So now in verse 25, it says, now when Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go back to my own place in my own country. Now that Jacob has prospered in the land of his mother's people, he's ready to go. He got his wives, he got his children, he got his livestock. He ready to go and, lead his own family. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know the work which I have done for you. That was verse 26. Verse 27, but Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your sight, stay with me, for I have learned from the omens and divination, and by experience, Remember, they did all these things back um, in the Babylonian Chaldean culture. That's why Abraham told his servant, "Don't take my son Isaac back there. Go get a wife and bring him back. Bring him back a wife. Don't take him back to my people. Bring him a wife from my people." He didn't want him going back there because he knew God had called them from there. All right. God was beginning to show them his ways, not the ways of their old culture and what they believed in and the gods that they worshiped. All right. He said, "Name your wages and I will give it to you." So Laban realizes that God has given Jacob favor. Laban realizes God has given him favor because of Jacob being in his house. How many people have favor and have been prosperous because you've been around them? Come on now. And so, verse 29 says, Jacob answered him, "You know how I have served you and how your possessions, your cattle, your sheep and goats have fared with me. For you had little before I came, homie. And it has increased and multiplied abundantly. And the Lord has favored you with blessings wherever I turned. I got the Midas touch. Whatever I touch has turned to gold in your house. But now, when shall I provide for my own household?" You know, I want to go and continue to raise my own family. I don't want to live in your house no more. I'm good now. People don't mind you prospering as long as they can benefit from it. But when you start talking about making moves for you and yours, oh, they have a problem with that, right? Many of you have been through that. Verse 31, Laban asks, "What shall I give you?" Jacob replied, "You shall give me nothing. Don't try to bribe me. What I'm going to do is watch over our flocks before I go, and whatever is fair for me to take, I'll take it, and leave you with whatever is fair for you to have." And after Jacob performs, this process of going through both of their flocks, in verse 43, moving down to 43, it says, Jacob became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks of sheep and goats and female and male servants and camels and donkeys. All right? And so, chapter 31. Now, the heading of this says, Jacob leaves secretly from Canaan. In other words, he's going to have to pack up his bags, call the U-Haul while Laban gone or something. You know how many of us have had to pack up real quick and leave because we knew it was going to be some drama, boy, when you get ready to leave. Some people don't want you to leave, you know. Verse 31 says, Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, now his sons started some mess, they messy. Jacob has taken away everything that was our father's, and from what belonged to our father has he acquired all this wealth and honor. Now wait a minute. Who out of the two had favor? And who was blessed the most? And who labored the most? All right, we'll find out. So Laban's sons are trying to start some mess between their father and Jacob. Not knowing it's because of Jacob that your father has prospered in what he has. Watch what it says. Jacob noticed a change in the attitude of Laban and saw that it was not friendly toward him as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers. Go back to Canaan and to your people, and I will be with you. So God says, your time is up here, brother. You're gonna have to get up out of here. There's some drama about to pop off, all right? I done bless you the way I want to bless you. I done bless him. You got your wives, your family, all right? Time for you to go back to mama and show her how you've been blessed. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to his flock in the field, and he said to them, I see a change in your father's attitude. He don't want me to leave. He don't want us to leave. He being selfish as he always been. That he is not friendly toward me as he was before, but the God of my father Isaac has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me as often as possible. In other words, every opportunity he had to cheat me, he took it and changed my wages 10 times, not once, not twice, but 10 times. But God did not allow him to hurt me. That's a message in it right in itself, right there. When God's favor is on your life, what people do to you will not hurt you. God will allow you to prosper anyway. You ought to tell somebody, what you did to me and what you meant for evil, God turned it around for my good. Come on now. And so he goes through a process of going through their flock. And he says that I'm going to go through the flock. I'm going to look over the flock, and whatever's fair for me to take, I'm going to take. Whatever's fair for you to take, you're going to take. So now he has to explain to his wives exactly what happened and what he had to do. And he lets them know that, because of these things, we're going to have to leave. I've been fair with your father. And so in verse 14, it says, Rachel and Leah answered him, is there still any portion of inheritance for us in our father's house? In other words, what do we got left? Well, sweetheart, you got your husband and what God has given him. Verse 15, are we not counted by him as foreigners? For he sold us to you in marriage and has also entirely used up our purchase price. So he done cheated. He done cheated you and blew what you done gave him. He says, surely all the riches which God has taken from our father are ours and our children's. So they see what God is doing. So what do they say? Now then, whatever God has told you to do, do it. Because we know God's favor is on your life. Do what God told you to do. Let's go. So here we see Laban's daughters know that they need to get out of their father's house and go with Jacob, because Laban ended up losing while Jacob prospered. Because while Laban was mistreating Jacob, God was preparing Jacob to win in the end. Come on now. People don't know why they're trying to hurt you. God is strategically planning for you to win in the end, and they're going to lose. They just don't know it. Can y'all tell? I want to preach this thing right here. Verse 17, it says, then Jacob took action and put his wives on camels, drove away his flock, and took along all his property which he had acquired in Padanaram, right? And he got to getting, like my best friend, God rest his soul, get to getting. God said, get up out of there. Get up out of Padanaram in the land of the Chaldees. Go back to Canaan where your father Isaac is. And so Rachel goes inside of the house and steals her father's household gods. Let's see what happens with that. Verse 20 says, and Jacob deceived Laban, the Aramean, Syrian, by not telling him that he intended to leave, and he slipped away secretly. Rightfully so, because you was going to have a fight on your hand between you and his sons. They ain't like how this turned out, Jacob. So he fled with everything he had and got up across the river Euphrates and set his face towards the hill country of Gilead, some pronounce it Gilead, east of the Jordan. So Jacob had to flee from Padanaram, away from Laban, like he had to flee from Canaan to get away from Esau. So the brother just been on the run, man. But Jacob's journey isn't over. We'll be back next week to see what's in store for him back in Canaan, where his angry brother Esau is. Right here on a walk through the Bible with your brother Pastor Mo of Liberating Truth Church. See you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Be there.